I finally got it. This is the long-awaited Prusa XL. This is the large format FDM 3D printer from the folks over at Prusa that released this for pre-order back in the fall of 2021, and I finally received my order, got this thing assembled, and got a few prints up and running, and today I want to talk with you about my experience that I've had with this machine so far. So first of all, this is not a review of the XL. I have not had nearly enough time to work with this and print with it. I've only had it for, I think, 4 or 5 days at this point while making this video. So I haven't had a whole heck of a lot of time to get a lot of things printed, which is why I'm only gonna have a few things to show off here. And they're taking a little bit longer to print than I was anticipating, but the quality so far is looking really good off of this machine. And obviously this is a huge machine, which was announced back in 2021, and on the day that it went up for pre-order, I immediately put in my pre-order. You had to put down a $200 deposit, and there was a lot of delays along the way to get to where we are right now. But the machine itself retails for $1,999, which is, yes, I know, pretty expensive for a 3D printer. The quality is here. There are definitely 3D printed parts. There are also machined parts with this as well, but overall the build quality of this is a really solid machine. And again, so far the prints that I've been seeing on it are really good. That said, I have run into some issues along the way while working with this that we'll dig into. And this is again a large format Core XY 3D printer that's sporting a build volume of 360 by 360 by 360 millimeters cubed. It is a really nice large build volume size that I'm able to print off a good number of different sized helmets and cosplay pieces, which is what I'm primarily going to be using this machine for, and I'm really excited to be continuing to print with it. They're also using their newly designed neck extruder here on the XL, which was also launched and available with the Mark IV 3D printer, and the XL comes pre-loaded with a 0.6 millimeter nozzle. Thank you. For big 3D printers, I'm typically swapping out the nozzles to a 0.6 anyways, so having something like this by default is a great thing to see. There is no bed leveling needed with this, no Z offset management like you have to do on the Prusa Mini or some of the other Prusa 3D printers or just other 3D printers. This has the load cell bed leveling method here, and it works so well. I've had literally like 0 issues on my Mark IV, and so far have had no issues with bed leveling with the XL. One other really cool thing about the XL that I don't think I've really seen on any other 3D printer is this modular heated bed design. So there's all these little individual panels, and depending on where your print is laying on the print bed, it's only going to have to heat up those particular panels to support the heated bed. The spool holder is also side mounted. Thank you for not putting that in the back like some other 3D printers that are out there. It drives me absolutely nuts. So having that easily accessible on the side, and the spool holder extends outwards so you can put larger spools on there. And with that direct drive extruder, there's also a filament runout sensor or even a filament detector there. So as you're feeding in filament from the side, it automatically knows that you're trying to feed in filament. So it's going to prompt you to load the filament, and you can pick which kind of filament that you're loading, which I think is such an ingenious way to load things. It just takes away some of the steps that you typically have to do with some of your 3D printers. It just works extremely well. Now, it typically comes with one build plate sheet. So this is a magnetic build plate surface there that's going to be able to snap right onto the 3D printer, and they work really well. But since I pre-ordered it and it took forever basically for this to arrive, they did include another print bed option. So I've got a textured surface, I've got the satin powder coated sheet option. So one's smooth, one's got a little bit of texture on it. I've only been using the satin powder coated, and honestly, I'm not entirely sure which one comes with the machine and which one was the extra add-on. I'll have to look that up and maybe put that in a note there. But as expected, they're really large, and I have had no issues aligning them or inserting them into the printer. There's also a little tab on the very front of the build plate where it lays down a little bit of filament before it starts your print job. The XL also has the ability to support up to 5 different extruders, which is just insane to me. I only went with the one option there, just the singular. I figure at some point, if I wanted to, I'll upgrade to maybe 2 at some point. I'm not a huge fan of multicolor printing. However, the possibility of printing with PETG and PLA, or TPU and PETG, or TPU and PLA has some really cool potential that I might want to consider in the future. And this was also also the kit version of the printer. I was trying to go for the most affordable option possible. This did take me a few days to get fully up and assembled. You could probably knock this out in maybe 2 to 4 hours if you just dedicate a whole bunch of time to it and really focus in on getting the build together. Overall, the build process was pretty straightforward and easy to follow. There were a few challenging points. I will say the biggest pain point of the installation had to be the cable management and just trying to get the wiring channeled and fed properly through the printer. It was just kind of a big pain. It's definitely doable, just a big pain. And once I got the printer fully assembled, when it came to actually powering it on and trying to use it, I was getting error messages, which I come to find out I just needed to do a firmware update, which was fine, and was able to get that sorted out. However, one small nitpicky thing that was just, I could not figure out for, it wasn't very long, but it was maybe 10 minutes, was you go through a calibration process on the printer, and I'm following through step by step from the guide, from the assembly, and it was failure after failure after failure for the heated bed. And it was such a simple solution. You just needed the magnetic build plate attached to the printer, but it was not stated anywhere in the instructions or online. Thankfully, there are comments all along those instruction manuals, and there were a bunch of other people commenting the exact same issue. I know, a really basic one, and I probably should have had that on there from the get-go, but I was exactly following the instructions. And the printer is Wi-Fi enabled. There's no camera or any AI functionality like you see on some of the other machines, but it does have the ability for you to wirelessly send print jobs from your computer directly to the machine via Prusa Link or Prusa Connect, or I believe even directly in Prusa Slicer. And it's a good bit faster than what I've seen on the Mark IV when it comes to file transfer speeds as well. So when using Prusa Link, which is the only option I've been able to get to work with the XL so far, it took for I think an 8 meg file, it was about a minute for it to transfer, versus the Mark IV on the exact same network takes almost 3 minutes. Also, I haven't been able to get Prusa Connect to connect to the machine. It keeps throwing errors, and that's because I need to do a full reformat of the machine apparently until it's able to connect. So yeah, that's going to be a fun one. I'll have to tackle that at some other point here. All right, let's talk about the most important thing, and that's the prints that are coming off the machine. And like I said, so far I've been seeing some really nice looking prints. The first thing I went off and printed is this Prusa logo. It takes like a 25 minutes, something like that, for this to print with that 0.6 millimeter nozzle. This came preloaded along with a handful of other files. I just haven't run those yet because they take a good bit longer. But I used the Galaxy Black PLA. They include a full roll of filament with the machine as well. I then found this amazing original sculpture from Wexter called the Bishop and went off and printed this in that same Galaxy Black PLA. Again, I'm using this as the default settings that come with the printer in Prusa Slicer. That's again one of the big benefits of buying one of these machines, is they have a whole bunch of different profile options for you to just work with. There's no real tuning that you have to do. And this looks so good. There was a good amount of stringing here as well, which I'm seeing on a lot of my prints, is just a lot of stringing. So I need to look into maybe adjusting something on the machine or just in some of the profiles, depending on what filament I'm using. But overall, the details are looking really sharp with that 0.6 nozzle at a 0.2 layer height. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you probably know that I love printing cosplay related things or comic book related things, like obviously Spiderman here. We'll get to that in a second. But what I first went off and printed is a Batman Dark Detective helmet, or at least the top of that helmet. This is from Yosh Studios. I ended up printing some of the other compartments or parts of that over on the Mark IV. But unfortunately, this print had a massive screw up towards the very end of the print job. This was, I believe, about a 21 hour long print. It had about 5% of the print left, and unfortunately the extruder got stuck in the gyroid infill. And good news is the crash detection that's available on this machine detected it and stopped the print, and it cooled everything down. The build plate still stayed warm, so the print would still stick to the build plate surface, but the nozzle was still cool. And unfortunately, this is just, to me, not entirely salvageable, and which was a good test fit for me because the supports removed really easily, which was great. And I was able to go on and try this out, and you could see it was actually just a little bit too small with how I scaled it. Now, one other thing that I noticed immediately after that print issue is that the bed was now out of alignment. I think because the nozzle got stuck and it was continuing to print there for a little bit, one side was lifting higher than the other. It just came askew. Thankfully, it was easy enough to resolve. I just went back and reran ran the calibration process and it re-leveled the bed automatically. Next, I went off and printed the back of this Spider-Man helmet, which is actually a Venom Spider-Man combination helmet from Yosh Studios. And again, I'm seeing a ton of stringing on this print. It almost looks like there's cobwebs all over this thing, but it's just the stringing from the filament, and thankfully it's easy enough to clean up with just a heat gun. But again, I think I'm gonna have to dial this in or just look at fine-tuning it a little bit. No stringing like this using the exact same roll of filament on the Mark IV. It's just with this, for some reason, I'm gonna have to figure out what exactly that is. But again, the print is looking really nice and clean other than all of the stringing there. I also wanted to do a print comparison between the Mark IV and the XL. So I went off and printed the Spider-Man eyes, again, using that same roll of black PLA. And on the Mark IV, using the input shaper profile option, which is just amazing. And I hope input shaping comes to the XL here, because it's just amazing. The prints look so good and it prints so fast. It's a great improvement to the Mark IV. But it took 1 hour and 20 minutes on the Mark IV with a 0.4 nozzle. And on the XL, it took 2.5 hours with that 0.6 nozzle. And again, seeing a good amount of stringing here. Then I ran off and printed this amazing Spider-Man helmet in red PLA. But one thing I'm very skeptical of is the actual time it takes for this to print, because there's no displayed information when your print job is completed, just like on the Mark IV, and it drives me nuts. So I have no idea exactly how long this print job took. So what I did was I used my phone and the camera here and just identified that I was starting this particular print at a particular time, and it was gonna take 1 day and 7 hours for this to print. It should have ended around 9:30 p.m. the next day. And it didn't end up officially printing and finishing until 3 hours later. It was about 12 or 12:30 in the night. And those estimates coming out of Prusa Slicer are pretty close to accurate. I mean, it's pretty spot on compared to a lot of the other slicers that are out there. However, I would still like to see the actual print time information on the display unit of the machine after my print job finishes, and on the Mark IV as well. This is the same issue that I have with the Bambu Lab P1P and the P1S. I don't know why new machines are coming out and not showing some basic print information of the job that just finished. It kind of drives me nuts. Also, this wasn't even using the full build plate, so I could only imagine, you know, if this was a massive print, it might have been off by 10 hours. I have no idea. It could have been massively off. But again, this file printed beautifully from Yosh Studios here. This was just phenomenal. This is exactly what I was hoping to get out of this machine, is some really clean, amazing looking detailed helmet files that I can run off and print with this machine. Again, this isn't meant to be a review. It's just sort of my experience that I've had with this so far in the handful of days with the machine. I'll definitely be doing a follow-up video here in the upcoming weeks or maybe a month or two, especially as some more updates come out for the machine. But so far it's working really well, other than that one massive issue that I had at the top of the helmet file. I'm definitely gonna be printing some more things, so follow me over on social medias if you wanna see those. Also, I wanna say a huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters for your continued support of me making content here over on the interwebs. If you're interested in things like my 3D printer settings, you can find those over in my Patreon. And let me know what you think about the Prusa XL in the comments down below. I'll definitely be doing some follow-up videos as well, comparing this machine and some of the other large format 3D printers that are available for you to check out, like the K1 Max that I'll be doing a video on here soon, along with one of my favorites, the Elegoo Neptune 3 Max. Thanks so much for watching, you all, and I'll see you next time.